Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's episode 49 of the 5 Minute Major Podcast STL, brought to you by Across the Board Games. Preseason's over. Regular season's coming. We're excited. And as you can see, we have a very special guest today, Mr. Alex Ferrario. Round of applause.
Oh, round of applause.
He is the voice. He is the voice you hear before and after every Blues game on the radio and beyond. He is awesome. We can't wait to hear more about his story and talk Blues hockey. Alex, how are you doing today, sir?
I am great, Mike and Josh. First of all, honored to be on with you guys. Appreciate the intro, and I'm excited, just like you both are, to talk hockey because, believe me, when preseason is done, that kicks it into another gear for me. Preseason's like Black Friday on your calendar, to where it's like, Christmas is coming, but you still have to wait for it. And then it's like that final preseason game is Christmas Eve, where my family always opens up the gifts, and then it's like, all right, let's get on with this bad boy. So I am very excited for preseason to have finally wrapped up and to get the season going.
I love that you said that, because I even wrote in our notes, I was like, it feels like it's Christmas Eve and hockey season starting. I was like, this is perfect.
Yep.
But we'll kind of jump right in. So a lot of people know you from 101 ESPN, but it looks like you got your start at Lindenwood University. So kind of tell us about your beginning into broadcasting and being on the radio and talking sports.
Yeah, so born and bred in St. Louis. I've lived here my whole life. My dad, he was a huge hockey fan. I think he was going to games when he was a kid back in 1967. So hockey was just always ingrained in my DNA, and I loved sports. I grew up listening to Jack Buck and Mike Shannon and Ken Wilson and Chris Kerber, and it was always a passion of mine. And as I went through high school, just trying to figure out, like most people do, of like, what do I want to do once I get closer to college? And I knew I wanted to be involved with sports somehow. And then the more and more I thought about it, it's like, man, I want to do what they're doing. I want to do play-by-play. I want to call the games and create those memories that I remember having when I was a kid with my dad. So, I got community college for free, so I stayed in St. Louis. I went to Merrimack for 2 years while I was starting to get my foot in the door. And, then it just came upon to where I saw Lindenwood, and I talked to a couple of different people, and I found out some alums that worked in the business. And it's like, man, this is perfect. It's still in the area. And the part that sold me at Lindenwood was you go in and you are immediately broadcasting. Some schools, you have to wait until you're a junior or a senior, or you got some experience. Man, I talked with the dean, who was Mike Wall at the time, and he told me, he's like, look, you enroll this Friday, I can have you on a football game. So I went to Lindenwood. I started off, and I engulfed myself with broadcasting. I did play-by-play, I did radio hosting, and I did television stuff, because I just didn't know where I wanted to go with broadcasting. And then as I got further into my degree, I realized that play-by-play is still a passion, but it's a tough gig to get. And all the while that I'm attending Lindenwood, I've made connections in the business in St. Louis. So long story short, my pastor at the time, he married Jeremy Rutherford and his wife. Jeremy Rutherford at the time of the Post-Dispatch. And so I think I was a junior in high school at the time. And he's like, do you want to meet JR? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So I got to go to lunch with JR. JR let me shadow him a little bit. And then that led me to a connection with Chris Kerber, who was looking for a booth intern at the time. And so at this time, I'm starting to get closer to college, and it's like, well, this is great. So I was a booth intern for Chris Kerber and Kelly Chase for 3 years. And then that third year, I met somebody who worked at KMOX, and they needed a producer, a part-time producer. So I'm like, hell yes. And that led me to being a producer at KMOX, to get to meet the program director there, to meet the people that were in the sports department. And as soon as I got to KMOX, I told them my passion. I said, I want to be broadcaster. I want to be on air. And so that led me to being a sports intern for KMOX while I was a producer, which basically meant I got to go into the locker rooms and cover the teams and get audio for the radio station, all while making money being a producer for the station. And then as my time went along there, Scott Warman went on to be on television, and they needed a weekend host. And so volunteered. I put my application in, and they accepted it. And so I think it was probably like 2 years into me being at KMOX, I started hosting Cardinals and Blues pre and post game on the weekends. And I was 25 years old at the time, and I'm attending Lindenwood still. And I'm getting to be on air on the biggest radio station in KMOX in the area. And then that just gradually led me to taking on more experience, filling in more roles. I was with the Blues at KMOX. I was the weekend pre and post game host when they won the Stanley Cup. And then so be it. 101 ESPN got the rights to the Blues, and the Blues said they wanted me to follow over. And so that led me to 101. And so I just painted like 10 years of my life into like 3 minutes, so there can be follow-up questions. But it is a weird journey how I got there. But yeah, I mean, Lindenwood University, I tell people all the time, it's where I got my start. They let me get on the air. They let me get experience. And then I got the chance to go out into the world and meet people that worked in the market. And then that advanced me in my position to where I'm at today.
That's awesome. And I think that's a testament to like the St. Louis community. It's a big, small place for those who are not from St. Louis. I think everyone knows everyone in a way. Like somehow you can find some form of a connection. And it's kind of cool that your pastor led you to JR,
Yeah.
which then led this trajectory for you. And look at you now, it's mind blowing and it's awesome. The cool part, I've kind of listened to you since early on. And then when you went to 101, it was like, that's my podcast. I'm not in St. Louis right now, but I listen to the show every day the next day. Like that's like routine.
I appreciate
it's cool to see how your trajectory has gone. Like, and Lindenwood was that stepping stone. We've worked with Lindenwood's hockey team early on here, and we can't say enough great things about Lindenwood. They've been very welcoming to our show and supporting us, and it's good to hear.
Yeah, well, it's full circle too, because I joke all the time, while I was getting on the air and hosting, I had Jeremy Rutherford do different interviews with me. And, now full circle, I'm doing a podcast with JR, and JR is one of my closest friends. He's probably one of my biggest mentors in this business. And so I just think it's so funny. He jokes with me all the time because when we met, I was, again, like a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid. That was my first meeting into the broadcast sports world. And we met at a Bandanas in Arnold. And JR met with me, and he gives me crap about this all the time because I showed up in a full suit and tie. I had a briefcase with me that had a single sheet of paper with a resume on it. And no joke, Jeremy Rutherford showed up in gym shorts and a t-shirt because he got done working out across the street. And he's like, I'm coming to a lunch to just talk to a kid because a friend of mine wanted me to meet him. This kid shows up in a suit and tie ready for a formal meeting. So, but yeah, it's crazy how this business works. I get people that I teach at Lindenwood now as an adjunct professor, and I have students reach out to me all the time and they say, how do you get into this business? And there's no one path, I think people just assume it's go to school, get experience, and then you'll get your job. There's really not a path. It's just you have to keep yourself open. You have to keep yourself available, but you've got to make connections. And that's the one thing I pride myself on is I was able to make connections early on, and it led me to more and more opportunities with my career.
It's incredible. It's seriously like just the coolest story. And it like you said, connections. They say it in every profession. But this one specifically, like yours specifically, feels like it's the biggest part for sure.
Yeah.
So are you like St. Louis City growing up, or?
Yeah. So my last name's Ferrario. So every time somebody hears me, they're like, "Oh, you were born on the hill." And yes, I was. I grew up on the hill. I always like to give them a look like, why do you just assume I'm from the hill? But yeah, I'm from the hill. But yeah, I grew up on the hill downtown, and then I think when I was 9 or 10 years old, we moved out to Jefferson County, and that's just where I've kind of called home. My parents still live there. My wife and I live in the Jefferson County area, and it's just kind of been home for us our entire lives. But yeah, I always like to reference that I was born on the hill because that's where I feel at home when I get to be on the hill. But, St. Louis has just been my area, and I am one of the lucky ones to not have to move. I mean, I've had friends that graduated with me from Lindenwood that I had one that was working in television that had to move to Quincy, Illinois. I had one that had to move to God, it was the middle of nowhere in Nebraska, and then he had to be in Des Moines, Iowa, and then about 8 years later, he came back to St. Louis, and now he's working with the Cardinals. So everybody has their own path, but I got so lucky to stay in St. Louis, and I wanted to do play-by-play, like I mentioned. I had a job in North Carolina to be a play-by-play man for the East Coast Hockey League. But circumstances in terms of my job at KMOX and my duties that I was doing already and the pay that I was making with KMOX and a full-time job that I just felt like it wasn't the right opportunity and the smart job move for me. And I also had a job in television going to work in Texarkana. And again, I wanted to be on television, but I just didn't feel like it was the right move for me. And man, I look back on that now and right decision at the right time, because that could have been me turning down two different job opportunities and I could be out of the business now working some other job. But instead, I turned them down. I took a chance on myself. I stuck at KMOX, and lo and behold, I finally got my full-time job and got to be in the broadcast world like I've always been wanting to do.
That's super cool. And I think Mike and I grew up here, and I am a travel nurse now. So I'm actually in Iowa City, Iowa. And our goal when we started this podcast was that we could do it remote from anywhere, because my girlfriend's actually in the United States military.
Oh, wow.
So she's in the Air Force. So we have a house in Belleville, Ontario, Canada, which you can believe there's not much going on, but the Belleville Belleville Senators are there.
Yeah.
So I live about 2 minutes away from their arena. So when I go up there in November, I've already mapped out how many games I'm going to. And then we're there in Canada
incredible.
for 3 years. So I'm going to see every single Canadian arena.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
Well, this is a true hockey podcast then if you're up in Belleville, Ontario, watching games. Yeah. And second of all, we'll tell your wife thank you for her service too.
I will. We appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're going global already.
Yeah. There you go.
We're global.
Shout out to you, man. Belleville, Ontario. We're coming at you.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Appreciate the story. And you can keep diving into your background as much as you want. I think we should jump into Blues hockey now that the season's starting and everything. We want to hear your take on everything. Yep. Obviously today, what is it, the 5th of October, we had some kind of sad news seeing Sonny getting helped off the ice. I mean, that could open some doors for, PTO players or the usual scratches to maybe getting starting position, or an AHL player finally getting their call up. Do you have any news on Sonny? I know Monty mentioned that he doesn't really know, right? Or did something come out?
No, yeah. Monty basically said, they don't really know anything right now. They're hoping for the best. I mean, from what I saw, so I wasn't at practice today, but talking with a couple of people that were there that saw it, he just had an awkward spill, and it didn't look like he could put any pressure on his foot. Now, he was helped off the ice. I always caution people that say, this is not going to be good. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when Colton Parayko looked like he went Gumby mode on the ice, and I thought he was done for the year, and he came back the next game. Broberg, we thought, was done for the year last year, and he was out for a month, and then he was back. So it's never as bad as it seems. The only issue with Oskar Sundqvist is, the miles that he has put on his lower body and what he has gone through. I hope that's not the case, because Oskar Sundqvist had told me and a couple of the other broadcasters, this is the best he's felt in 2 years. You hate to see somebody get injured in camp, especially when you've gotten all through these preseason games without any injuries. But this is how it goes. I don't know with Sundqvist in terms of what the injury is or how long this could be. We'll have to wait to find that out. But what that does is now it opens up opportunities for somebody else, because all along I was thinking that Sundqvist was a guarantee. He was the 12th forward. Joseph was the 13th forward, and you were looking for one more forward. Now you're probably looking for two forwards, which might be a good thing for the Blues, because asset management, you can not have to put Texier on waivers if Sundqvist has to go on the IR for a little bit, and you could keep Texier and Joseph and give Lucic a little bit more of a runway. But we'll have to wait to see with Sundqvist what happens.
Yeah, I was surprised with the news today, and I followed along with you guys on BK and Ferrario, and we kind of had these discussions too. We really thought Texier was going to be the odd man out, But I feel like with him not going on waivers today really kind of sheds a light on that he probably is making this team.
Yeah.
The other guy I was surprised by through this camp was Skinner. Skinner really stepped up and showed that he could be that seventh defenseman. And I did see he did get put on waivers, and I think he'll clear. But I think it shows that Kessel has some competition, and I feel better about this defensive core knowing there's some actual depth this year. I don't know what your take is, but
Yeah. No, it's a good point, Josh. I said this on postgame last night. Like, coming into this season, I didn't think they had depth on the right side of defense, which is why they traded for Logan Mailloux. And I still believe they don't have another top 4 guy on the right side other than Juracek. But to have multiple guys now on the right side that you can look at and you say, yeah, you could get by with 5 games or 10 games if you need them to. It made sense to me. I thought Skinner really opened everyone's eyes. But the hard part is you always have to go to asset management at this time of the year. And yes, both Kessel and Skinner have to clear waivers. But what people never understand is like when a team claims a guy off of waivers, they have to be on their NHL roster for 30 days. They can't just claim them and send them down to the American Hockey League. So if you're the Blues, you've got Matt Kessel, who has played in the NHL and has been somebody that has been able to keep up in the NHL. And you've got Hunter Skinner, who looked good in training camp and preseason games, but hasn't played in the NHL yet. Which one is more likely to get claimed by a team? And I think Kessel's the obvious answer here. Not saying Kessel didn't have a good camp. I thought Kessel was fine, but Hunter Skinner played very similar to the way Tyler Tucker plays in terms of like he's just got a nastiness to him. And I mean, Joe Vitale references this all the time on the broadcast, and I say it as well. They need more piss and vinegar on their team. And that's what it was nice to see Kessel and Skinner provide that. So, you know, it makes sense that Skinner's going through waivers. I hope for the Blues' sake you don't see him get claimed. Anything can happen. But I think asset management tells you that more teams are going to be likely to see Skinner and say, no, we're not going to claim him. Versus Kessel, somebody could say, no, we'll take an NHL right-handed defenseman, which are not easy to come by.
And that opens the door up for for Lucic too, the physicality. I mean, he might be slower than he once was, obviously, with age, and he's coming back off a year off playing. But like you said, you know, the grit. I mean, even just to come down from the booth to the ice for like a game, for a few shifts, for 8 minutes, like it could be a game changer. So that's something that the asset management comes into play. And like the Fairweather fans or even like some really good hockey fans might not even know that. Seriously, it's the depth of how it's a business sometimes more than it is just a sport to watch.
Yeah, I mean, like, I understand people's opinion on Milan Lucic in terms of he looks slow and how he's not going to be able to keep up. Because, look, the matter of fact is there's no more Ryan Reeves in the NHL anymore. And what I mean by that, because Ryan Reeves is a great hockey player, but there's no more Ryan Reeves of the early days to where he was just an enforcer. There's no more of what Cam Jansen was. Like, if you're going to be on the ice, you're going to have to play at minimum 12 minutes, and you're going to have to be competent in both areas of the ice. And Jim Montgomery said that as much. The first day of training camp, he said, look, Milan Lucic, great player, incredible career. He's going to have to earn a spot on this roster, and he's going to have to be responsible in both ends of the ice. Here's my thing with Milan Lucic. And with the Sundqvist news, it might open up more opportunities to where they get a longer look at Milan Lucic. The tweaks that he has dealt with throughout training camp, the groin that he had, and then I know he wasn't skating today because he tweaked something, that doesn't bode well for his chances of getting a contract because you've got to be available. And now without Sundqvist, you can't be unavailable and only have one guy and no extra forwards. So that doesn't bode well for him. But what does is every time that I've seen Milan Lucic play, every period looks like he's gotten better. And that makes sense considering he's been out of the game for 2 years. Like, he's not the same guy he was. There's going to be a little bit of catching up the pace. But I go back and look at that game that he just played the other night against Chicago. That play that he was a part of to score the goal, not so much of the goal that he scored, but watch the whole play. He chases the puck in the zone. He goes in and he defends the puck in the offensive zone off of 2 Blackhawks players, keeps possession, gets it to Toropchenko, And as Logan Mayhew is retrieving that puck, what's Milan Lucic's instinct? Go to the net. And he goes right in front. He parks his butt right in front of the goaltender, and he wins the net front presence. I don't know about you guys, but in the past, specifically the last 3 years, with the exception of Jake Neighbors and Braden Shen, there have not been a whole lot of net front presence players for this Blues team. So, yes, Milan Lucic doesn't look like Jordan Kyrou out on the ice, but I don't need him to look like Jordan Kyrou. I've got Jordan Kyrou. What I need from Milan Lucic is when you're on the ice for 10 or 11 minutes, do you go to the front of the net and do you possess that space? Because that's where he's going to advance. Think of the line he's going to be a part of. Playing with Walker and Toropchenko. There's already speed on that lineup. If I'm Milan Lucic, you know what I got to do? Get the puck in, win the puck battle, go to the front of the net. And then the other part of the Milan Lucic thing, and it's why with the Sundqvist it's taken a different role, but when it was Lucic or Texier, and I said this last night on postgame, Texier to me isn't a fourth-line player. Texier is a middle six winger for you. You don't have a whole lot of guys that are fourth line capable. Like Matthew Joseph is, but Matthew Joseph's biggest knock last year was consistency. Oscar Sundqvist obviously is, but I don't know how many games Oscar Sundqvist is going to be able to play. When I look at the top 9, there's only one spot these guys are cracking. And if I'm Nick Bjugstad deserves to be on that third line more so than any of these other players because of what he's done in the past. So then it comes down to, okay, I've got Texier and Lucic. There was a play against Dallas, and I apologize I'm long-winded. There was a play against Dallas where Matthew Joseph went behind the net and laid a massive hit on, I believe it was Miro Heiskanen. And it's a hit that warrants the other 4 guys on the ice to come to the defense of their defenseman. Not one person did that in Dallas in that game. Now, maybe this was because Dallas was up 3-0 and didn't want to get injured, but maybe it was because they saw Milan Lucic on the ice and they say, I don't know if I want to take a chance of that. And you just let Matthew Joseph be. That's the presence that Lucic has when he's on the ice. Last season, when the Blues played Utah, we all remember that game that Tyler Tucker acted like he was going to fight Liam O'Brien off the faceoff, faked it, took the shot, scored the goal. Pissed off Liam O'Brien. O'Brien fought Tucker the next shift, and it revved up that Utah Hockey Club team, and they won that game. You need somebody who can control the ice. And again, he's not out there a lot, so sometimes it's not going to work. But the players have been wanting somebody that is keeping the other team second-guessing laying that big hit. So that's why I feel like Milan Lucic. Has he been the best player on the ice? No, I don't believe so. But I think Milan Lucic's presence speaks for itself. The team and the organization have spoken so highly of him, and I think that presence is warranted on a fourth line, even if it's for 30 games this season, more so than 40 games of Texier trying to figure out what role he can adapt to.
I couldn't agree more. And when they signed Lucic to this PTO, Mike and I had this talk where you look back at the 2019 team for an example, what Pat Maroon was in that locker room and on that ice and that net front presence. And we just couldn't help but compare the two. Yes, they're very different players in a lot of ways, but they also have a lot of similarities as well. And we just, the camaraderie and what you've heard the team talk about and the excitement of having him there, it's just hard not to see it what they were with Pat Maroon. Yeah. And I feel like that's the last guy that you could say dump the puck in. He could hold the puck in the corner until reinforcements can get there. And that's what we've struggled over the past couple seasons with, I think. The dump and chase game is a very hard game to perfect. And we did a lot of dumping and chasing last year early in the season where no one got the puck. And I think this is a guy that would help with that. And that's what Mike and I have talked about since day one and what this team is missing. And I think you hit it right on the head with it.
It's a great point by both of you to bring up Pat Maroon because I've brought him up too. Do you guys know how many goals or points Pat Maroon had up until I think it was Christmas, if not January 1st in that Stanley Cup season? How many would you guess Pat Maroon had?
5?
4?
He had 10. He had 10 points.
Nice.
I think that was 45 games in. I might have to double check my math on this. But the whole reason I'm saying this is he was playing a third line role. And remember, there was frustration with Pat Maroon. There was rumors he was going to be waived. And
Yep.
we all know what happened. He became the hometown hero, and Pat Maroon goes on to win 3 Stanley Cups. But I isolate those first 3 months of the season where Pat Maroon had 10 points. That was a third-line role. But Pat Maroon, even if he wasn't picking up the points, he was doing the same thing every single shift. Go in, win puck battles, be a presence, give your team the best opportunity to have the next best shift. And that's what Milan Lucic is for. Jim Montgomery used that fourth line last year as an identity line. I don't know if they're going to be able to play that same way, even if Milan Lucic is not skating with them. But guys, let's also remember, Radek Faksa wasn't fast. Faksa was slow. Now, he was very smart defensively, but if I'm going to give any credit to Milan Lucic, Jake Neighbors, Braden Shen, Jim Montgomery, Doug Armstrong, Torrey Krug even, and Jeremy Rutherford's piece at The Athletic all spoke of how smart Milan Lucic is on the ice. So, again, I don't know what this is going to look like. They may, for all I know, not give him a PTO and just go their separate ways. It might not look good in 20 games and say, ooh, we might have to cut bait. It's what they did with James Neal a couple of years ago in preseason. But to me, Milan Lucic is a presence on and off the ice, and I think those players are very valuable to teams that are looking to get back to a winning culture.
And I was going to say, this seems to be a style of Doug Armstrong, because you look back at these, I'd say, savvy veterans he's brought in over the years. You have the Jason Arnotts, the Jamie Langenbrunners, the guys that he's brought in to be competitive in camp that have either gone on to stay with the team and be leaders or have at least helped built a foundation in a training camp. And I think Lucic will just go into the long list of moves that we see Doug, that a lot of people around the league may be going, what is he doing? But Doug is a madman when he comes to cap mobility and ability to just push the right button. And I think Lucic is going to fit that role. And I really do think, especially with the Sonny injury, I think he has to be a lock on this team, because I just don't want to push Stenberg to be up here and try to play in a fourth line role or a third line role. That I think he needs to go down and marinate a little bit in the AHL and get better. And kind of to segue into our youth that's coming, I don't want to rush them. We see teams around the league rush their young players so much. And I think that's the foundation of the Blues. We don't rush. And that may be a fault to an extent, but I think Dvorsky is a year away, in my opinion. I think he is probably the number 2 call-up, in my opinion. I think Stenberg's probably your number 1 call-up. And I don't know what your take is, but who would you think is that number 1 call-up if there is an injury this year?
I think both are number 1 call-ups, and here's what I mean. I think if they have an injury to a center position, then I think Dvorsky gets recalled. If they have an injury on the wing, then I think Stenberg gets recalled. Now, I could be wrong on this. I do agree with your assessment. I think Stenberg impressed more than Dvorsky, because multiple games Stenberg stuck out to me, and the only one game that Dvorsky stuck out to me was that first game that they played on home ice against Chicago. He scored a goal. That was a game I thought he was at his best. So Stenberg, if you're looking at both of them, I think Stenberg would be a tick higher. But both are different prospects in the sense that Otto Stenberg is more than likely going to be a winger at the NHL level. So there's less responsibilities for him. He'll come in and he'll just jump in to use that hockey sense to create offense, but he's not the number 1 guy relied upon on both sides of the ice. Dvorsky, it is very evident that the Blues are preparing for him to be a number 2 centerman. That's what they want. The reason they signed Pius Suter to a 2-year deal is because they don't want to fast track this. They want to slow play this to make sure that when Dvorsky comes up, Doug Armstrong says it all the time, organizations can hurt a prospect just as much as a prospect can hurt an organization. So rather than have Dvorsky up here play on the wing, and I know everybody's preference is, oh, well, Robert Thomas did it when they won the Stanley Cup. You're not wrong. They did. But that roster also was Stanley Cup aspirations and had deep from top to bottom. Thomas just made sense. Thomas also was in and out of the lineup and was able to sit up in the press box a lot that season. They want reps for Dvorsky. So I think both need to go down to the American Hockey League, and they need to play 40 or 50 games being the number 1 guy, playing the power play, playing the penalty kill, playing 5-on-5, playing 6-on-5 when your team is up by a goal, 6-on-5 when your team is down by a goal. Let them play everywhere so that when they get recalled at some point this season, they're ready to fill into that spot. And next year in training camp, they're ready to take that spot. So I think it's the smart play. I know people are upset and felt like they wanted to see Dvorsky and Stenberg. If this team 2 years ago was in the same spot they're in right now, I think Dvorsky and Stenberg would be playing at the NHL. But the acquisition of Holloway and Broberg and Fowler, to me, expedited the Blues retool. And they're no longer in the business of developing. They're in the business of winning. And I'm not saying they're in a Stanley Cup winning window. They're in a playoff consistently every year window. And that, remember, I made this reference in the past back to that 2011-2012 Blues team when they fired Davis Payne, brought in Ken Hitchcock, made the playoffs, and then they went on a stretch where they made the playoffs. I think it was every single year all the way up till that the 2017-2018 season where they missed by a point. That, to me, is what the Blues just happened. Last year they made it in. This year, I'd expect them to be a playoff team, and then I expect it to get incrementally better every single year. So don't put Dvorsky up here to play a third-line wing role. Wait till he's ready to play a second-line or a third-line center role, and the same can be said about Otto Stenberg. And the other thing people aren't giving enough credit to, and I don't know what's going to happen, the Blues have all of these assets. They're not all going to play at the NHL level for this team. Like they're all not going to be on the NHL roster. So what does Doug Armstrong do with these assets? How does he evaluate them in terms of, are you a piece for our team or are you a piece to go get what we need for our team right now? That's the other thing people have to keep in mind moving forward.
Yeah, I think we talked about a lot of the options this team has. And I think with Holloway's addition, we always like to poke fun at Edmonton and how that whole situation went down.
And you know what's funny about it? Not to interrupt you. You know what's funny about it? We were all pissed off at the time as fans because we thought they were going to match on Broberg and just let Holloway walk. Yeah. We thought Broberg was the prized possession. And I'm not disagreeing with that statement because Broberg is still an incredible player, but Holloway to me is a potential 90-point player. And I think people would have been really upset if the Blues would have just got Holloway and not Broberg. And now in hindsight, you look back and you'd be like, oh, I think we would have been more upset if they didn't get Holloway than what they've gotten right now. But, I mean, both have just been difference makers for the team.
I feel bad for the fans up there. I mean, you have the two of the best players in the world, and they just can't. They've gotten there, and they just can't finish. And it's to me, it's defensive depth. Personally, that's my opinion. But
me, it's goaltending. You know, I think
and that's the other joke we make too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they've undermined goaltending for the longest time, and now I think it's what's going to bite them in the rear end and lose Connor McDavid at some point.
Yep. Yeah. We don't have to go on too big of a tangent, but we do think that this is maybe 2 more years of him. Like maybe he signs a little superstar bridge and tries again, but after that, it's he'll be gone.
Yep.
All right.
You got
sorry. No, you go, Josh. You go.
In regards to contracts, I know we were just talking about contracts with McDavid. We're seeing these crazy contracts. Krill got the $17 million. You got Jackson Lacombe, who just signed, was it $9 million?
And that one is insane to me.
That one right there is the one I kind of wanted to focus on for a second because you look at a player of his caliber. And he's 24 years old. He's played 148 games. He has 16 goals, 44 assists, 60 points. You compare him to Broberg, and now you're like, well, Broberg's probably going to make more than that. And it's kind of crazy because now we're looking at Broberg's probably going to need north of $9 million, and then I don't even know what they're going to have to give Holloway if he has another good year. And I don't know what your take would be, but like, you have to figure both are almost $9 million players, and then you're getting into the realm you're paying them more than Thomas and Kyrou. And it's a lot of money that the Blues are going to have to shell out here. And I know there's money coming off the books with Krug and Falk here in the next couple of years. Do these guys look for a bridge deal? Do these guys look for this max term 7-year deal, 8-year deal? What do you kind of think is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it should be surprising to anybody that both are going to be $9+ million players. I mean, it's just the way the market's going to go. Like the reason I say that Lacombe contract is crazy to me is because he had one good season for Anaheim, and not even one good season, one good 3/4 of a season. Now, if you're Anaheim, you're buying low. Like you have one good season, but it's like, hey, I'm going to pay you because you might become a superstar. It's what the Blues did with Thomas, right? Like they paid Thomas $8 million, and it's like, well, that's a good deal. It's a lot of money. They hope he lives up to it. Now it's going to be one of the best contracts in the NHL. So Jackson Lacombe could still go out there and be the next Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes or something like that, Lane Hudson in Montreal. But to me, man, $9 million for a guy that scored 16 goals in 148 games. It was like a minus 27 last year. That's a big risk. If you're Anaheim, you take that risk because you're trying to build something. If you're the Blues, you want to see what this looks like. And I love Doug Armstrong's approach. It's like, look, he's our guy. Like, he's not going anywhere. If somebody offer sheets him, we're going to match the offer sheet. He's already basically told the NHL that. To be a top 4 defenseman or a top 6 winger, you're going to be a $9+ million player, like, or at least an $8 million player. So I think Broberg has already looked at the market and said, yeah, I'm $9 million, and it's just a matter of, do I want to go short term or long term? Doug loves the short term. He's done it in the past, but he's also extended guys like Thomas and Kyrou when he thinks they're building blocks. I have no skin in the game. I have no information, but my gut feel tells me that both will be long-term contract extensions because the Blues are going to want to lock up their core, and it's just a matter of how high they have to go in AAV to get those players to be willing to sign a 7 or 8 year contract. I think it would have to be 7 because next year, the new CBA, you can't go past 7. But I don't think anybody should be panicked that they're not going to get these guys locked up. They're not going to let them walk. They're not going to get offer sheeted. The Blues will know that if Holloway is an 80-plus point player or Broberg is a top pair eligible defenseman, you lock those guys up for the long term. And my guess is both will be.
Yeah, I do wonder if you give Holloway a similar deal to what you gave Thomas, in that 8 by like 8.12 kind of deal. I just don't know if or 7 by the 8. And it's interesting. It's really going to, I think, come down to his productivity this year, and if he can do what he did last year at that same rate, and if he does better, I mean, he just earns some more money, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Holloway, and again, I'm not Holloway. I haven't talked to him about it, but if I'm Holloway's agent, as a forward and a goal scorer and a point producer, I would go short term versus long term. I think defensemen make more sense going long term because, as we saw last year, injuries can happen and it could just plague the rest of your career. I mean, we saw this with John Klingberg in the past, where he was a long term guy. Everyone was like, "This is a top pair," and then like he was gone and not the same guy again because of injuries. But I think if I'm Holloway, and he's already been labeled the hardest worker on the team by Doug Armstrong. If I'm Holloway's agent, I look at the market and say, what's the point of signing a 7-year deal if I can sign a 3 or 4 year deal and then sign another 3 or 4 year deal and another 3 or 4 year deal and just make bank? So I'm fascinated to see what the market is going to do because McDavid is going to be the tone setter, even with Kaprizov signing. Then you got Jack Eichel contract that he's going to re-sign, whatever that's going to be. I think there's going to be benchmarks of guys. Kyle Connor's the other one that's going to sign. There's going to be benchmarks of what players sign, and that's going to be a determining factor. But if you're a Blues fan, who cares? It's better for you if he goes out there and puts up 90-plus points and you have to pay him because you've got a 90-plus point player that's going to get paid accordingly.
Yeah. I think people were a little freaked out with the Fowler contract just due to his age, but it's like, I mean, I think he's born again. I think he's just, and people aren't going to realize that $6 million is nothing for a top pair defenseman. But I do understand, like, 3 years on top of his age might seem kind of wild, but look at Florida. They just got Mikkola locked in until he's 37 at like $5 million. So why not try and do the same, you know?
And I think with Fowler too, Mike, I think recency bias is what people are concerned about. Torrey Krug's contract, Nick Leddy's extension, Marco Scandella's extension. I think people see it and it's like, man, last time you gave out contracts to players without really seeing them for more than half a season, it bit you in the rear end. All of those guys weren't point-producing defensemen, though. Like, that's my hick. And Torrey Krug was, but Torrey Krug's fairness, I think he was dealing with this pre-arthritis injury for a long time, and it stunted his game. Also, the people that are critical of Torrey Krug, he was always an offensive defenseman. And guess what? When you lose all of the point getters on the forward, your defensemen aren't going to pick up as many points. So I'm a little bit more defensive of Torrey Krug. Defensively, I don't think he was that great, but offensively, the dip in his play is like, yeah, they lost Tarasenko and O'Reilly and Perron. You lost a lot of offense of why you brought in Torrey Krug. But for Fowler, that's why to me it makes sense. And I made this reference on our podcast last week. If I were to tell you that Cam Fowler in 2 seasons is making $4.6 million, what would everyone's reaction be? It'd be excitement, right? Like, I mean, that's a steal. Yeah. In terms of the percentage towards the cap, in 2 years, 6.1 is going to be the equivalent of right now $4.6 million. And also remember, in 2 years, Torrey Krug and Justin Falk's contracts are off the books. That's $13 million that they're opening up, adding 6.1. And I know people's reaction is, well, you got to pay Broberg $9 million. Cool. $9 million on 6.1, that's $15 million. You've added $2 more million as the cap rises. Like, all Fowler needs to do is 1, stay healthy, and 2, continue to be competent. I don't need him to be a top pair defenseman for the next 3 years. That's what Broberg's for. Broberg's there to be the top pair defenseman in a couple of years. If Fowler is still putting up 35 to 40 points a year, playing 18 minutes a night, and playing second pair for you and second power play unit for you in 2 years, to me, that's a steal. You're bringing in Fowler so that you can slow play it with your prospects and you can see the natural transition of Fowler number 1 left side, Broberg number 2, and then Broberg unseats him and Fowler is still playing 17 minutes a night. Like, it made this all the sense in the world. It could blow up in their face, but every contract extension could blow up in their face. And if Cam Fowler went out this season and put up 50-plus points, you're probably talking about him making north of $7 million in this salary cap world that's moving up. So anybody that says it was a bad contract, I understand where they're coming from. They're a little scared, PTSD of years past, but the Blues haven't had Cam Fowler with the exception of Torrey Krug, and go look at Torrey Krug's first couple of years with the team before they started shipping off forwards.
I'm looking at him right now. I was about to just put some numbers for Torrey Krug, back him up even more. I mean, career average 50 points a year. I mean, like, what else do you need from a guy?
Look at their power play in those first 2-3 years. They were top 5 in the National Hockey League every one of those years. Torrey Krug was exactly what the Blues needed. He wasn't Alex Pietrangelo, which was unfair to him, but he was an offensive-minded defenseman who plays in your top 4. Not the greatest defensively, but he's competitive. The problem for the Blues was, after I think it was his 3rd year, when things started to go south, they shipped out Tarasenko, they shipped out O'Reilly, they shipped out Perron, they lost Jaden Schwartz. All of the forwards that they had offensively were gone, which means your power play is not going to be any good, which means your offense from the defenseman is starting to get short. And then you're looking at them solely on playing defense, and that's not Torrey Krug's specialty.
Right.
I was a very big advocate when we got Krug. Michael attests to this. I bought a jersey like the week we bought.
There we go.
So I am like in that small group of people that were like, this is my guy and he's going to be my ride or die now.
Hey, I did that too, and I have an Eric Johnson jersey still hanging up in my closet. I was ride or die the first overall pick, and I look back and it's like, ooh.
I mean, great career. Might have not won with the Blues,
career.
But I mean, incredible career. Anyone that can play 1,000 games,
Oh, and win a Stanley Cup. I mean,
yeah.
Oh man, those pesky Avalanche.
I was gonna say in the comparison of like
those pesky golf carts.
Well, we've all experienced the pesky golf cart every now and then. The impact that I think we can see in some veteran defensemen, and I mean Jay Bouwmeester. A lot of people complained about him towards the end of like, he's not what this team needs. But like now you look back and everyone through the rough years like, man, we wouldn't be having this problem if Jay Bouwmeester was here. And I think that's Blues fans. Like, we're a very knowledgeable fan base, but sometimes we jump the gun when it's ready to write off a player, and we every year someone gets picked, and it's always the player that the Blues fans just want to go after. It was Jordan Kyrou a couple of years ago. But once we come around, we realize, like Cam Fowler, I think long-term will be looked back as a player that was helpful in transition in building the core foundation of what our defense is going to function on. Because if you can take an ounce of Cam Fowler and put him into Philip Broberg in ways with his mental capacity in the game, like people will love it because it's just we're built on skating defensemen finally, and that's how
Yeah.
you win in the league. It's a 200-foot game, and your defense have to be that extra forward in moments for you. And I think you talked about this on BK and Ferrario. Could this be the best 40-point scoring group that we've ever had? And
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think there's a strong shot that Parayko, Fowler, and Broberg could all put up 40 points. And I think you are spot on, and I 100% agree with you. And I think people need to start listening to that fact that this core is going to be the best we've had in a long time.
Yeah. Well, first of all, sorry, my dog is going to start barking right now at the worst time possible. Well, first of all, thank you for pumping my tires, because anytime we can do that, I will take that every day of the week. That just was an insane stat to me. Like, it would be the first time in franchise history that the Blues had 3 defensemen with 40 or more points in one season. And it's crazy to say, because they've had McInnes and Pronger, they've had Pietrangelo and Bouwmeester. Like, they've had multiple Hall of Fame defensemen on one team. But I truly believe this might be the best 6 defensemen that the Blues have had in franchise history. They all play the same way. They all can skate. They're all big. So now you're back to that 2019-esque group. Like, I think the smallest guy you have on defense is Justin Falk, who is 6'1". Everyone else is 6'3" or above. And look at how all of them skate. I mean, all of them can jump up into the rush for a 3-on-2 and legitimately give you a scoring chance while playing sound defense. So I think it's probably one of the many areas that I'm excited to see this season, because Jim Montgomery wants his defensemen to jump up in the rush. And I think about the problem that the Blues made in years past when they went after Torrey Krug and Nick Leddy. Doug Armstrong, in my opinion, was trying to get ahead of the curve. He was trying to get smaller, fast offensive defensemen because of the Quinn Hughes and the Adam Fox and the Cale Makars. And he was like, we'll do that with Vince Dunn and Torrey Krug, and you've got Nick Leddy. The problem was the NHL was still using those, but they needed big defensemen too. And the Blues got away from that. The biggest guy they had was Parayko and Mikkola, and everyone else was just tiny. So now they've entered that area where they've got 6 smooth defensemen skating, 6 guys who can create offense, but 6 guys who are big and play nasty in front of their net. So it's going to be one of the more dangerous areas that the Blues have this season. And I think if I look in the Central Division specifically, I'd say they're probably top 3 in terms of defensive cores from 1 to 6.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'll let Mike kind of take up from here, but I was looking at the groups of defensemen, and everyone has big back-end defensemen, and I'm excited to see how they match up against the Dallases. And, I mean, the other team is the defensive core in Winnipeg is massive, and we saw that in the playoffs with Logan Stanley lighting up Kyrou. Like, he's a mammoth of a human, and to have guys on our end that are also mammoths, I think will help balance out that play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think, or what's your opinion on Mayu so far? I think the trade, obviously, it's one of those classic just hockey trades, good guy for good guy, you know, possible upside, possible failure in it. You never know. But, I mean, from what I've seen and heard, he's like, people are really happy with his growth already. I made the point when it first happened that this is going to be a great trade. I just feel it. I just want to know how you feel about it before we move on to some other topics.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Offensively, he's exactly what I thought he was. I mean, he's a gifted guy with a really good shot. The thing about Logan Mailloux that I really like is he gets pucks to the net. It's been a long time since the Blues have had defensemen that actually hit the net with pucks. Like, a lot of the times, the pucks don't go to the net. They go by the net, they go high, they go wide. Logan Mailloux is just direct. It's got those low, Joey calls them shin shots. Those are the ones that get deflected, and that's where Logan Mailloux really can be effective. But the part that I'm really impressed by is how aware he is in his own end. Multiple games this preseason, I've seen him break up plays with his stick or with his body position. And then, of course, we saw that fight that he got into. Like, we know he's scrappy and can play. He's an all-around defenseman. This is not a third-pair guy that you hope for upside. I think he's already a top-4 defenseman, but they want to slow play it. They want to make sure he can groom and grow into what they need from him. And I personally believe this is going to be one of those trades that 3 years from now, you'll see a highlight reel of Zach Bolduc, and you'll be like, oh, man, did you see what Bolduc did? And then you'll go, yeah, but we got Logan Mailloux out of it. I don't think it's going to be, oh, my God, did you see what Bolduc did? Oh, yeah, but we got Mailloux. I think it's going to be, yeah, but we got Mailloux out of this. Because to me, I think Mailloux and Broberg are going to be a fun pair in the future. Not right away. I think the Blues are going to stick with Broberg and Falk early on to let them kind of piggyback off of what they did last year, because I thought Falk was actually good when he played with Broberg. But I think the pairing of the future is probably Broberg and Mailloux, which is fascinating to say because they're both 23 years old, and we're talking about these guys as already top 4 defensemen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Blues fans don't understand, like, finding right-handed shot defensemen this size, this age group, are hard to find. And in all honesty, Logan Mailloux was not on our list when we even talked about right-handed shots. We talked about Nemec in New Jersey. We talked about Brant Clark in LA. But yeah. I think now, looking statistics, looking at the games of play, I think we got the better overall defensive-minded and offensive-minded player out of the 3 when you kind of compare them. Because the other 2 are not as great in their own end, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, you're spot on there. And I think the fascination with Brant Clark and Nemec was that they were top picks in the draft. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I mean, top picks typically turn out to be something. But I didn't see Logan Mailloux happening either. I thought Noah Dobson was going to be the one that they were going to target. And that was what the rumor was. And I actually believe that the Blues got the better of the 2 between Dobson and Mailloux in terms of work ethic and feistiness. The part that I like about Logan Mailloux is he is one of those under-the-radar plays. And that was the same with Broberg. Nobody knew Broberg was a bust up until the Stanley Cup final the year that Edmonton lost. Like, Broberg was a bust. He was a part of trades that people were speculating. It's like, oh, yeah, just ship out Broberg. He was an extra guy. And then that playoff happened, and everyone was like, oh, this is that guy. That goes to show you stars get made in the playoffs, even when you don't believe that they are. And the part that I love about Logan Mailloux is he's already dominated the AHL. Brant Clark and Simon Nemec, they're good players, but they're still figuring out the game at the pro level. And they didn't have a whole lot of time in the AHL because they were top picks, and they went right to the NHL. Mailloux has been one of the best players, if not the best player in the AHL amongst defensemen for multiple years. And now it's just like, yeah, it's just time for him to play at the NHL. And you're seeing the fruits of that right now. To me, it's what Broberg was. Broberg marinated in the AHL for the longest time because he never got trusted for the Edmonton Oilers. And I think Montreal felt the same way. Now, it's not only trust, it's, hey, you've got the green light. Nobody's unseating you. Go out there and do what we think you can be capable of.
Which is, it's just crazy. You look at these rosters and like Edmonton, you look at that defensive core and yes, you have the Evan Bouchards and the Matthias Ekholms, but like, it was like, come on. Like it was hard to see that he wasn't getting that shot for as long as they kept him down. And I get when you're paying guys as much as you are, as like Nurse getting over $9 million, it's hard to give guys that opportunity. But Edmonton is just it's an interesting organization. And when you look at how and what players they pick, because they're the stereotypical team that they're top heavy with their contracts. And now you're seeing the issues of not spreading the wealth out, and you can't put together a great bottom group or a goalie. And I think that's why Doug, and I keep going back to this, is his understanding of not overpaying and picking those guys and that pack mentality is why I think the Blues will be a longevity of a winning franchise, because you can balance out the team. Because I think we're going to see, like, Minnesota's going to run into this issue. How are you going to put a team around Krill when you're paying him $17 million?
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Like, the thing with Edmonton too is Edmonton's in win now. Like, they need championships. Mm-hmm. And I still don't understand the decision to move on from Broberg and Holloway, but I guess I could see where they're coming from, to where it's like, look, we've got Nurse, we've got Ekholm, we've got Bouchard. Typically, you need your top threes, and then you just need some depth pieces. And at the time, they were like, well, we got a couple of guys that we can roll with, and we're in a good position. And Holloway was a third-line winger for them. Now, we see it now, and it's like, man, wish you were Edmonton. In Edmonton's minds, it's like, look, we need money to allocate elsewhere, and if these guys are wanting higher AAVs than what we're willing to offer them, then we're just going to have to let them go and not bring them back. So on one hand, I get it, but you're right in the pack mentality. Like, it's why I found the Kaprizov contract so fascinating, because I think that's what the norm is going to be. Teams are going to have to pay superstars $18 million or $17 million to keep them around. I mean, look at Colorado. Colorado had to trade away Rantanen because they knew they weren't going to be able to re-sign him. So teams are going to be top-heavy, and I don't believe top-heavy teams have success in the postseason. I believe it's the deep teams, or if you're the Florida freaking Panthers that can go out there and find like 6 superstars and get them all under payroll, that's how you win. I'm not saying the Blues are going to go on a tear and be a Stanley Cup perennial powerhouse for the next 10 years, but it'll be fascinating to see how they combat a superstar-laden team like Minnesota, to where it's going to be Kaprizov and then everyone else versus Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich, Holloway, Brobert, Parayko, Binnington, Mayu, and everybody's kind of paid right around the same stratosphere, somewhere between $8 and $10 million. I just personally think if you continue to draft and develop players properly, that's how you build the pipeline. And I mean, look at the Blues. Like, the last 5 drafts, they've selected Snuggerud in the 20s, Bolduc in the 20s, or I think he was like in the late teens, Dvorsky, who was 10th, but then Stenberg and Lindstein in the 20s, and then you just drafted Justin Carbonneau and Adam Jiricek, 17th, 16th, and 19th overall? Like, man, if you can continue to find guys in the mid-20s to be NHL players, yeah, you're gonna have that pack mentality that other teams are going to be wishing they have.
You know what's so funny is Blues fans, they're always making the joke like, oh, we're going to have another 17th overall pick and barely miss the playoffs or whatever. But it's like, don't you realize what we've
That's
done?
a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
mean,
good
Kyrie
thing.
was a 2nd-round pick. Like,
Yeah.
it just
Well,
doesn't
how
make it
about Thomas?
sometimes.
Well,
Yeah.
Robert Thomas now, if you redrafted his draft, is a top 5 pick. And they
Oh,
had him at
easily.
what, 21, 22, I think? Colton Parayko was a 3rd-round pick. And people look at
Yeah.
him, and I know there's still some that don't believe he's a top-pair defenseman. I think those people are idiots. But, like, that's
Yeah.
a 3rd-round draft pick. That is a number 1 defenseman. So
Yeah.
go off of recency, though. Like, Tony Feltrin is the one that has been making the last few drafts since Bill Armstrong went to Arizona/Utah. That's where they have found Snuggerud, Bolduc, Jiricek, Lindstein, Stenberg, Kaskamaki, who's been later in the rounds. They've got a couple of kids in Russia right now that I've been talking with some scouts that say, oh, man, they found some diamonds over there. So, like, the Blues are in one of those positions right now, which, again, going back to 2011, 2012, they're in a position where they're opening a window, and if things go right, the window could be open for 10-plus years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say we talk with Mike Myers, who's with Sports Hub STL, and then he does his own stuff on the side. He just keeps raving about some of these KHL players that, like, they're like, Blues fans don't know, but like there's more guys that were late round picks, like 6th, 7th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks that could be those guys that come over and are just like, who is this guy?
Yeah,
And they can just score.
Yeah, that Susiev, who's in the AHL now, that was the one that I saw in training camp. And I mean, he's got the skill. It's just understanding the other elements of the game, which is typical for Russian players, right? It's offense, not as much defense. But Korotky, I think, came onto the scene last year, and everybody was talking about him. And now he's doing it at the actual KHL, not the KHL juniors level. They have another kid that they just drafted, Fedorov or something like that.
Yep.
Apparently this kid's a stud that they don't understand how he was looked over in so many rounds. I think was after I interviewed one of the prospect analysts a couple of games ago. And then they got this defenseman who's 6'4", this Koromislav, who's played in the KHL for the last couple of years. So again, I'm not trying to sit here and hype on players until we see them, but the big picture is this pipeline is stacked. And I think the best part about it is, sure, we could get excited about what he could be for the Blues, but man, When has Doug Armstrong ever made a move of trading a young player away and that guy has gone on to dominate the league elsewhere? Typically, he trades guys and it's like, I don't think he's going to be much, but the hype is still real, and they get a really good player in return, and that player doesn't amount to much when he gets traded to the next organization.
Yeah, I think Dominic Bach is a perfect example. Like you get Justin Falk in a time where there was question marks and you needed that safety net, and I know a lot of people still get frustrated over that, but like you didn't know what the future was going to hold with Alex Pietrangelo, and it was one of those
defenseman at the time.
Yeah, and could run a power play. That was the thing this team was missing too at that time, is get a guy that can run a power play, and he was a stud. And I think we're still seeing him run that second power play. But I think it's just until Logan Mailloux can take more responsibility and not have to rush him into that role. And I think we'll see that some way and some point throughout this season. Logan Mailloux, I think, will take over that role from Justin Falk.
Yeah, and Montgomery addressed that a couple of days ago, saying, like, look, right now we want him to focus on 5-on-5. We want him to be great at 5-on-5, which I get. I mean, you got Falk, you got Fowler. You don't need Mailloux to play the power play for you. I think in time, Logan Mailloux will play the power play, but right now you don't need it.
Yeah.
All right. God, we've talked about so much. Where are we?
We've just kind of bounced around. I love this. This has been great.
That's the way to do it, man.
Awesome.
It's hockey season. We talk about everything.
What do you think about Benny right now? I mean, he was unreal in the preseason. And I think we know who he is. Blues fans understand who he is. Mm-hmm. Now Canada knows who he is. Finally, he's getting some respect there. I think this is going to be one of those seasons where we're just like, there's another one from Binnington. There he goes again. And he's going to help us way more than it has been at least the past couple of years. So
a bold prediction of mine is I think this is the year that people start talking about him again in the regular season, because Jordan Binnington's narrative over the last few years has been, well, he's a great postseason goalie, but regular season, he's fine. I don't think that's going to be the case this year, because I think this is the best his defense has looked. The thing about Jordan Binnington is when he's locked in, he's one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League. And now he's got a group of defensemen that are elite and can take care of him, so he doesn't have to worry about scrambling in the net as much. So I think Jordan Binnington is going to be a Vezina potential goaltender. I don't know if he's going to win it. I think he could be top 3 or top 5, no question.
Yeah, I think he deserves to be in that top 5 range.
Agreed.
And I think the other thing that benefits our team is Joel Hofer is also no slouch of a goalie, and I think that's a good thing when Binnington doesn't have to carry the workload the full season. And we see this in a lot of teams that try to make their goalies play more than they should. And prime example is Connor Hellebuck. Connor Hellebuck plays too many games, in my opinion, throughout the regular season. And I know he's just a freak of nature goalie that is like, you have to drag me out of the net before you'll take me out. But if he could stay probably a little more conserved throughout the season, I mean, I think it would have been a different matchup in the playoffs. I think he has a little psyche issues when it comes to the big games we see. But I think if he wasn't forced to play these 60-plus games a year, who knows what the Connor Hellebuck of the playoffs would be then.
Oh, yeah, that to me has been the biggest problem for Winnipeg. Now, I think we learned this year Connor Hellebuck's a little bit of a head case in the playoffs, which I'd be a little concerned if I'm Winnipeg right now, considering my number one guy gets very shell-shocked in postseason play. But, Binnington, and we had this conversation with the goalie coach the last couple of years. Binnington's at his best when he's not overworked, which is why you don't see his numbers get up to 50, 60-plus games. His sweet spot's about 45. I think it might be even fewer this year because of how many tight stretches of hockey games that are going to be played with the Olympics. So that's why I wonder if Binnington will be on his best in 35 to 41 games. And then you've got Joel Hofer. And Joey says this all the time, and I agree with him. I think the Blues have one of the best goaltending tandems in the National Hockey League with Joel Hofer. Joel Hofer last year, the Blues wanted to start getting him more larger games. And what I mean by that is not so much of the Columbuses or the San Jose's or the second games of the back-to-backs. No, they wanted to give him the Colorados, the Dallases. They wanted to give him a couple of big games because they're going to have a decision to make on Hofer in a couple of years. So you want to see what this guy's got, and that's why if you can get a goalie who could play in those big games on top of Binnington already doing it, man, you've got the potential of having a Jennings Trophy conversation once again of having two goaltenders towards the top of the National Hockey League. And a lot of this just comes down to how both of them play, how the defense plays in front of them. But for Binnington and Hofer, I think you might see a slight more tick in games played for Hofer this season, which might make Jordan Binnington even more elite than what he's been in the past.
Yeah. I was going to say,
sorry,
Mikey.
but,
No, you go, Mikey.
I wanted to mention the Olympics because I think it's something about an Olympic year where you realize having two goalies that can win hockey games is so much more important than having one. It's just the way it is. So, and the Blues' depth overall, I think, is going to be such a big benefit this year, especially. We'll notice it, and people will probably start noticing it too. I'm looking at Binnington and Hofer's stats. Obviously Hofer has a lot less games, but they literally have identical save percentages and nearly identical goals against for their careers. So pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, to me, and that's the part that I think makes them one of the best tandems in the NHL. They're the same goalie. They play the puck the same way. They're mobile. They can come out of their net. They're really good with the puck on their stick. Hofer's big, but Binnington's strong. They're the same goalie. And if you're a team, that's what makes you great when it doesn't matter who's in between the pipes. Like a lot of teams, you look at teams that have tandems, like the Rangers, for example. Shesterkin and Quick are two different goaltenders. Both are really good, but they're two different goaltenders. So you got to play two different ways. You remember when the Blues had Chad Johnson as their backup before Binnington was called up? You got to play more desperate in front of your backup than you do your regular. In those regular games, it's like, oh, cool, I can actually try some stuff now. Man, every game the Blues play the same way because of Hofer and Binnington.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, that's so kind of to segue on the Olympic top. First, who do you think is USA's goalie? We've had this debate. We are both leaning more towards Jake Ottinger takes it this year. I know everyone's going to say Hellebuck, but I think Jake Ottinger's on a mission. And I think this is going to kind of be the year that we see Jake Ottinger kind of solidify himself as one of the top USA goalies. Because I think we saw Swayman took a step backwards. Oh, yeah. And then I think with the playoff issues, per se, for Hellebuck, I do wonder if Ottinger, even with the quotes from his coach during the playoffs, I think Ottinger could push to be that number one goalie. I don't know what your take is, and this isn't Blues topic related, but
I think it's going to be Hellebuck. And the only reason I say that is because this will be the last Olympics Hellebuck will be able to play in. I mean, maybe he'll be around in 4 years, but they know they'll have multiple Olympics with Jake Ottinger as their number one. I think Hellebuck's the number one, and then Ottinger is the number two. And Ottinger will play a good amount because, they do a tandem in that as well. And plus, I'm sure the Winnipeg Jets are going to make it clear, hey, let's not overwork this guy. We need him for our team. But when it comes to the big games, once you get to the elimination games, my expectations that it would be Connor Hellebuck. It's like it was the last year of Luongo with Team Canada. Luongo was past his prime, but he was still the number one guy for him because they know what they've got coming up. So I think it'll be Hellebuck. I don't know if Ottinger will unseat him. The real question will be how many games does Hellebuck get versus Jake Ottinger?
Yeah.
Anything else, Josh, about USA?
Yeah, no, I think the last question I have in regards to the Olympics, looking at this Blues roster and the options, Canada's stacked. We all know it. Canada took a crazy team to the Four Nations. Mm-hmm. Do you see a dark horse of a Robert Thomas making this team, in your opinion? Yeah, I think he should be in that conversation, in my opinion, but I think there's some Canadian fans that are like, I don't know if he's ready just yet. And I'm like, what else does the man have to do for you?
Yeah, I think Thomas will. I don't know how much he's going to play in the Olympics, but I think he will be on the Olympics roster. Those are two very different topics because, like, to be on the Olympics roster is one thing. And I think if he wouldn't have gotten injured last year, he would have been on the Four Nations roster. It's just, are you in the lineup? And that just comes down to what Canada wants. When you play Team USA, you need more feistiness than you need skill in your bottom six. And that's really where Robert Thomas is going to be playing. So I think he makes it. I think Team Canada is going to have Parayko, Binnington, and Thomas. I think Sweden is going to have Broberg. I wonder if Sundqvist gets on it. I don't think he will, but I wonder if Sundqvist is like one of those depth forwards that they bring on just to have. Health is the part that really concerns me with that. And unless I'm forgetting anybody, I don't know if anybody else is going to be a part of it. Since Russia's not in it, it takes away Pavel Buchnevich's chance. And I don't think Dvorsky's going to be on Slovakia. I don't think he's got experience enough to be on Slovakia. Plus, they got a lot of NHL players. So I think that's probably it in terms of the Olympics. You'll get the 3 for Canada and then Broberg for Team Sweden. Unless I'm forgetting somebody, which is very possible. Like Fowler, maybe?
I think Texier will be on France. France.
Okay, yeah, sorry, Texier.
For sure.
I forgot that, and I will defend myself here because we talked with Texier on Saturday, and we asked him about the Olympics, and he even joked, he's like, yeah, we're going to the Olympics. We're not expecting to win or anything, but it's fun to play in. So my apologies to France. I forgot you were in it, but yes, Texier. Fowler's would be Team USA, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe he's USA.
I could make a debate that
pick.
I don't know if he gets on. I mean, they got a lot of good defensemen on USA, as we saw at the Four Nations. But let's say injuries happen. Is he the 9th best defenseman? Is he the 10th best defenseman? Maybe do they have him on a list and say, like, keep him in your mind? So he would be a real dark horse for me. But I think you have 3 for sure. 4, in my opinion, you'll have for sure with Thomas going to Team Canada.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think back. Was Fowler on that last USA Olympic team that lost to Canada?
I'm pretty sure he was because it was when he was younger with Anaheim.
Suter was too, because Suter was on that roster, wasn't he?
Yeah. I'm almost certain Fowler was on that.
Yeah.
Because that was like, I feel like you got to bring back some of those guys that have been there. Yeah. And like, they didn't win it, but like, you were as close as you possibly could go to winning that. And I wonder if Fowler is that dark horse, just like that depth piece, just for that mentorship in the locker room.
It'll be something really interesting. Like, because you can't compete with what the Blues had back in, 2012 when they had like 7 or 8 guys. But, you had Russia in the Olympics, and so that was multiple players on your team. You had a couple of USA guys with Backus and Oshie. But yeah, still, if you get 4 guys and 5, if Russia was playing, Buchnevich would be on that roster. So 4 guys, that's a pretty good thing to have if you're the Blues, and 3 of them being on Team Canada. Like, Canada's not easy to crack, and if you could get 3 guys on that roster, I would take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. We always end our podcast, if you're from St. Louis, with this last question. So, where is your go-to place to eat in St. Louis?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
how much time do you have? I don't know if I can narrow this down to one.
You can give a list.
We'll do top 5 then, if that helps you.
Top 5. Okay, that helps me. Favaza's on the Hill is. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to categorize all of these for you guys into the number 1 destination in the category. All right. For fancy night out, Favaza's in a heartbeat. That's my wife and I's. It's been our date night spot since we were dating back in 2013. So, like, that one is the go-to date night spot. In terms of go-to quick food, it's Joya's Hot Salami, and there's no second closest. Like, Joya's is my favorite place to go to get a sandwich. And I'm really weird. They've got tons of them now. I've got to have the one on the Hill. I've got to have the original Joya's on the Hill. And then in terms of pizza, Ferracci's up in, I believe it's Manchester, if not like Ellisville. It's kind of like a Sicilian-style pizza. Oh, God. Love me some pepperoni pizza from there, and then their salad, and then some toasted ravioli from there as well. So I'll categorize them. Number 1 spot that matches all of those categories there.
Okay.
My girlfriend and I...
Go ahead.
I was gonna say my girlfriend and I are moving like right there by Ferracci's, and we've never had
God.
it, and it's on the list.
I haven't had it, but it's on my
first
list.
pizza night. We're gonna try it. So
There's two things that I say. If I grew up any longer on the hill, I would be obese, and if I lived on the hill or by Ferracci's, I would be obese.
yeah,
That's just how it goes. That's just how it goes. But now my life is with 3 toddlers. My life is quick food, which is McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, or I try and emerald it up every once in a while up in my kitchen, which too unsuccessful most of the time if you've ever tried to feed a toddler.
Hey, it's the challenge of it, and like that's the one thing not being in St. Louis. I realize how much food I miss from back home. So when I come home, so like I'll be home for the home opener, so it'll be like Thursday through Sunday. I'll have to cram in a bunch of the places I want to go, and that's always like I come home and I'm like, okay, I gotta hit all these places up real quick because I'm back to Iowa where I don't have my home cooking and I miss it.
That is dangerous to try and squeeze all of that food into a small amount of time, man. I'd have like a top 100 list, and man, I would be in the hospital probably after a weekend like that.
Oh man, yeah, it's one of those things, and I mean, I love the hill. I grew up going to the hill every Saturday with my grandma, so that place is like near and dear to me. So like, no matter what, I have to make a trip to the hill for something.
Oh yeah,
but yeah. Other than that, Mike, you got anything else?
No, I do not. It's been a pleasure, Alex. We appreciate you, man. Hopefully, we can see you at some games and anywhere.
Yeah, I appreciate. I kind of just walked up to you out of the blue, and I was like, "Hey," I have looked up to you, and I'm like, I would love you to come on our podcast. And you're probably like, what is this guy doing? But thank you so much for hopping on with us. I really do appreciate you.
The pleasure is all mine. I know I have a persona on the radio to where people are like, I don't like other people coming up to me and things like that. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Anytime I don't like small talk, like when people come up and be like, oh, I heard you on the radio, and then just stand there and stare at me awkwardly. Most of the time it's at the grocery store, which I like. If people know me, it's like I got to get in and get out of the grocery store in 15 minutes. So, like, let me get done. But if there's one thing I will always do, I will talk to anybody who is a fan. I mean, I'm not doing what I'm doing if not for people that enjoy listening to me, that tells me that I'm doing something right, that I'm entertaining, that I'm funny, that I'm providing insight on stuff that people are fans of. But I've loved the sports scene in St. Louis. So anytime somebody stops me and says what you said, Josh, of like, hey, I looked up to you, I love listening to you. Please, that's music to my ears. So the pleasure is all mine for coming on this, man. You guys do a great job with this podcast. Continue, keeping this great friendship that's been going on since 3rd grade, and keep talking hockey, because no matter what, man, like this is the whole reason of sports, right? Like, to just have fun with it and talk and enjoy it and be a fan and get upset. I love when people do this. So props to you guys for keeping this thing going. Thank you for inviting me. And anytime you want me on, you just please reach out.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.